we are sort of picking up steam, say, in the mid-caps or the Russell or the semis, guys, but still, big tech underperforming, Carol.
Oh, my God. And, you take a look at kind of the day's movements. We're kind of just all over the place. I call it a meh trade because it's nothing super, super exciting. But you look at the S&P 500 still, Alex, and you still have about 377 names actually gaining some ground despite kind of the overall very mellow trade among the major equity averages.
Yeah, I'm all taking a look at Bitcoin, as I like to do. It's at $100,000 per Bitcoin, up about $800 today. So we are seeing some buying there, Vonnie.
Yeah, and also we had some comments from Fed Governor Waller to the extent that there might actually be more than 2 rate cuts this year if inflation continues on its trajectory. And that sort of sent some good vibes towards the bond market, right? That and the Scott Bessent Treasury hearing.
Yeah, I saw the 2-year yield. If you look at the GIP, it just drops when Waller made those comments on CNBC, saying maybe we could get 4 rate cuts this year. And I think that's really what moved the market in that sense. Nonetheless, after those drops in rates, we didn't see much of a rally in stocks. We didn't see that move ripple across other assets like we did yesterday when you saw rates move. So I don't know if the market really buys it quite yet. You need to see more inflation data, more tame inflation data before the market really eats into it.
And speaking of, there is the closing bell. We're a little bit softer. Look at that NASDAQ. We're closing out about 0.9% lower, down by 174 points. Looking at S&P, off by about 0.2%, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average off 0.1%. Volume pretty mixed when you look at the 30-day average, guys. But the Russell and mid-cap seem to be ending the day a little bit higher, Carol.
All right, I'm going to go back and just remind everybody, still most names in the S&P gaining some ground today, just 124 declining in today's session, Vonnie. So, yeah, still a little bit, of a positive tilt, but, you look at just the major averages at the close here, and it doesn't look like much of anything.
And all that's reflected, of course, in the map of the S&P 500, where you see, information technology, communication services, consumer discretionary, the 3 down sectors. However, much of everything else was higher. It was really kind of a tale of 2 chips as well. We had China putting on a probe onto the export of U.S. chips, and at the same time, you had results out of TSMC that showed more capex spending for chip makers. So that sort of had a push-pull to this market as well.
Yeah, TSM, certainly one of my gainers here. So let's start there. Thank you, Vonnie, for that. Taiwan Semiconductor, folks, at its highs up more than 7% in today's session, finishing the day with about a 3.9% gain. We're talking, of course, about the ADRs jumping. The world's largest supplier of made-to-order chips did come out with an upbeat outlook, fueling some hopes of some more AI spending this year. Specifically, they forecast quarterly sales in CapEx for 2025 ahead of analyst estimates, driven by strong demand for AI hardware. So you really saw a bump up in that one. Having said that, the news out of Taiwan Semi boosted shares of some other semi names, and that included KLA Corp. That one off its highs, at its highs was up almost 9%, but finishing the day with a gain of about 4%. And we did see certainly that one an outperformer. I also I think you guys were talking about it. I think a lot of us here at Bloomberg, we had Richemont hitting a record in the European trade, carrying over to the United States. We're talking about the ADRs up about 17%. I think they also hit a record in today's session. This had to do with the company coming out and talking about its third quarter sales, helping to revive sentiment toward that luxury sector that has really been beaten down. So some upbeat news out of that.
That's you, Carol, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Shopping jewelry at Richemont.
Yeah, I got a kid in college. Yeah, I don't shop for anything for myself anymore. But yeah, so definitely you saw Tapestry. I think you saw Estee Lauder, some other names up a little bit higher. And then just real quickly, I want to squeeze in. We did get about 2 o'clock Wall Street time. You had the news coming out that Rio Tinto and Glencore may be said to be talking about a potential combination, according to folks in the know. Finished off its highs, but you did see Glencore finishing the day up about 2
What do you think of when you hear the word tapestry?
I don't think of Coach.
I think of painting.
Carol King.
Carol
I know,
King.
that's what you
Thank
think
you
of.
very much. I always think of Carol King every time I hear that word.
I think of Martha's Vineyard for some reason.
This is a word association. This will be our next segment.
I thought Carol Massar would also think of Carol King.
I do. My sister Ellen had the album growing up, so I did listen to it. I don't think of Coach. Sorry, Coach.
Yeah, no, me neither. All right, Tim, what do you got?
All right, what do you guys think of when I say worst performer on a points basis in the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100?
I say United Health.
Apple.
Apple.
Oh.
Yeah. That's not the Dow, though. The Dow You'd be right, Alex.
Okay.
Apple shares falling today, 4%, the most going back to August of 2024. The company extending this recent slump. It's underperforming the market. Lowest going back to November. The stock down about 8.9% so far this month. It's down 12% from those late December all-time highs. No fundamental news today, but the stock has been under pressure. We've reported on this all week over concerns over iPhone sales in the Chinese market specifically. We'll hear from Apple in just a couple of weeks. Bank of America, though, we did hear from them this morning. Shares falling today by just about 1% on the day. You can round that up. The bank's net interest income for the fourth quarter beat the average analyst estimate, though results were partially offset by higher expenses. So why did the stock fall today after this report? Well, we posed that question to Allison Williams at Bloomberg Intelligence. He said that thanks to yesterday's results from the other banks, a lot was baked in terms of expectations to Bank of America. After all, shares were higher yesterday by about 3%. And finally, there it is, Alex, United Health Group down 6% today. Shares fell after elevated medical costs remained in the fourth quarter. Revenue missed estimates. Also, this morning's earnings call was the first time its executives publicly have addressed the December murder of Brian Thompson since that incident. United Health CEO Andrew Whitty acknowledged the frustration with the U.S. healthcare system and said United Health was in a position to help reduce friction for consumers. Shares down 6% today.
All right, guys, I'm just taking a look at the bond market here real quick. We're seeing buying pretty much across the curve, but after yesterday's dramatic move in the bond market, this doesn't feel that exciting. The 10-year yield is down by just about 4 basis points. We did get lower yields when you had Chris Waller on an opposing network talking about how there could be 3 to 4 rate cuts this year, depending
CNBC.
on the data. I didn't say I'm not going to.
I don't care where it happens. I want to tell our viewers and our listeners the info, right? So they can act on it.
All right. I said another network, but whatever, we'll go with that. Anyway, and so you saw pretty much buying there on the long end. Scott Besson not talking today necessarily about where he'll issue on the curve either. That was really front and center for those bond guys, Matt.
Were you wondering about JB Hunt?
Always.
Earnings? Let me break them for you. In case you're watching for JB Hunt earnings, I'll tell you that fourth quarter EPS was $1.53, and we were looking for $1.63, so missing by a dime. Intermodal revenue was $1.6 billion. The estimate was $1.57 billion, so beating by a smidge on intermodal revenue. In terms of dedicated revenue, and we're going to get Lee Klasko on later to clarify what this stuff means. Dedicated revenue, $838.5 million. The estimate was for $849.6 million. And then total revenue, which is much easier to understand, $3.15 billion. That is bang in line with the $3.15 billion that Wall Street forecast. But the bottom line, Carol, is they missed by a dime at JB Hunt. What does that say about the trucking industry? We're going to talk to Lee Klasko about it a little later on the show.
I just like how you say intermodal. I don't know why, but I just do. All right, so let's move along to some of the interesting stories on our radar. And one that really caught our attention has to do with MBAs, and particularly Harvard MBAs. Apparently the school coming out and saying 23% of job-seeking Harvard MBAs who graduated last spring still looking for work 3 months after leaving campus. That share is up from 20% previous year during a cooling white-collar labor market. Remember back then, the figure was 10% back in 2022, according to the school. So they're not the only one, Tim.
Yeah, this is something we saw in the Wall Street Journal, and it's getting a lot of attention today because more than a dozen of these top-tier MBA programs. We're talking about Wharton at University of Pennsylvania. We got Stanford's Graduate School of Business, Stern down at NYU. Vonnie, they all had worse job placement outcomes last year than any other in recent memory.
Well, I mean, it is the McKinsey point, right? The top of the top is where you need to be. And I guess companies seem to be not doing what we used to call the milk round anymore. They don't hire in advance. They just hire at the very end of the year or even after students have graduated. So in some cases, in the highest Ivy League schools, more than 20% of kids or, MBA grads, they don't have to be kids, are still hunting 3 and more months afterwards. What we're keeping an eye on, though, is the cold weather, because it's about to get even colder. And for the TikTok CEO, who apparently is going to be celebrating on Sunday and Monday in Washington, D.C., I hope he has a jacket with him, because apparently temperatures will drop to 24 degrees Fahrenheit.
That is an awesome story.
Without the wind chill.
By the way, in 2020, Donald Trump used IEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, to ban TikTok. Now, 5 years later, he's inviting the CEO of TikTok to the inauguration.
What do you make of it?
To sit with Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and all of the former presidents who are going to go. It's just an
What do you make of that?
amazing.
We're talking about the weather.
They're going to have to keep each other warm.
Thank
Oh,
you.
it's going to be cold.
I
It's
thought
going
it
to
was
be
a
cold.
weather story, right?
I just want to hear
really
what
cool
Matt.
weather
I want to
story.
hear
What am I
Matt
supposed to
thinks
say
of
about
this
the weather?
reversal.
Like, are they going to get out and walk? During the inauguration, like presidents have been doing? I don't know.
Supply and demand, heating oil prices,
There's that too.
the grid.
The mitten index, all that
God.
good stuff. All right, guys. we gotta
God
wrap.
makes the weather like this.
All right, intermodal.
Which one?
Intermodal. All right, that's a wrap. Our cross-platform radio, TV, YouTube, Bloomberg Originals. We call it the closing bell. A little bit wacky there, but that's how we are on this Thursday. All right, we'll see you again. Same time, same place tomorrow.